Welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. If you're ready to create results and make huge strides in your business, finances, personal development, and health, then you're in the right place. Pushing past excuses and powering through procrastination can be a challenge alone. Here, you'll get the support, tools, and knowledge you need to get to the level you desire in your business and life. Let's get started with your host, Byron Ingram.
And welcome to another episode of the Big Movement Podcast. Today, we have Deborah Ager, who founded Radiant Media Labs and is a story and marketing pro. She helps service-based small businesses craft their business story so they can sparkle in the sea of blah and grow their business. So let's learn how she does this. So, Deborah, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. So how did you get into this world of helping people navigate the sea of blah to stand out?
Well, it started, I came to start a magazine about 2003, and I realized, after looking back on that from years later, I realized that what had really helped me gain success with the magazine was our brand story. So just real quick, when I started the magazine, I shared the story of how we came to be and what was important to us and what helped us stand out. And then one day I got a phone call from Yale University, and they were asking for my social security number. So since they were asking for my social security number, as in my personal number, I thought this has got to be a scam. And I didn't give them the information they wanted. But later when I Googled the woman's name, I saw that she did work at the Yale Library, and what they had really wanted was my business tax ID number. So after that happened, then Harvard subscribed, then Yale, and then many other universities subscribed to the magazine. And those kinds of things happened because I shared the brand story. And we had a lot of we were able to expand the message, we were able to expand the magazine, and get the word out because of the storytelling and also the marketing aspect.
Oh, excellent. And it's really powerful when you can share a story, because I think that's something people forget about, that it's the most simplistic way to connect with someone. You think about the whole art of connection. If you didn't have a story, you wouldn't walk up to someone and say, hey, you're cool, let's go do this.
Yeah, you're right. I think stories help us connect as humans. And I think that's one thing that's missing in marketing a lot of times. I'm sure you've had that friend, and probably a lot of the listeners have. You've had that friend who was well-meaning, but they kept trying to sell you things. Every time they saw you, hi, buy my thing, buy my thing. And then on their Facebook page, buy my thing, buy my thing. But there was no developing of a relationship before they started asking you to trust them enough to buy what it was they were selling. So I think what I love about stories is how it gives us a chance to share what it is we do and what we're experts at, but it invites people in if they want to learn more, but it doesn't pound them over the head with our expertise and make it unpleasant for them.
Right, exactly. That's the most important thing. It gives you that ability to start the rapport building process, because you think about why people love to watch movies, they read books, is because they're captivated by the stories that are there. And when we don't use it, it doesn't work well. Think about the movies that have just stood the test of time, where it doesn't matter how old they are, people still want to watch them, versus the ones that they didn't have a great story and people can't get out of the theater fast enough.
Right, exactly. And we really connect with those stories because they make us curious. And that's something you want as a business owner. You want to make people curious. And I think that when a good story happens on the screen, one reason that we keep watching is because we're curious to see what will happen next. Or maybe if it's a bad movie, we really just want to finish our popcorn. I don't know.
Right. I think that's where also in today's world, you really look at the reviews out there. You think about it. And in the past, before we had social media, with sharing stories, it was limited. You had to just trust the reviews that you would see from, the actual critics that would be in newspapers and so forth, and what you knew about something, and you just went from there. Versus now, everything is crowdsourced, so your story is so much more important than it ever was.
Right, and I think what's really important is that our businesses and who we are and our brands, it's really tied into the stories other people are telling about us. So when I work with clients, and they're telling other people about me, that is my brand, the stories that they're telling about working with me. And we can't really control all that, except we can't control the words other people say, but what we can control is our offer, the experience we give our customers, and then just our overall brand. Am I going to offer sort of the classic, very conservative, elegant vibe with my business, or do I want to be, have purple hair and lots of tattoos and have that be part of my brand? So, or do I want to wear a tuxedo on my website? There's all different kinds of people who have different kinds of way of presenting themselves, and it all ties into their brand and how we remember them, and also how we remember their message. And I feel like in a looser way, how we dress, the colors on our website, the way we speak, and the way we write on our website and in other places, all of that ties into who we are, and then also to our brand.
Right, exactly. It's so vital that we understand those principles, because people often, they don't. They just go with whatever. You think about the flavor of the month in terms of marketing. Someone will see that there's a person having success, let's say with tattoos down their arms. They think, maybe I need to do the same thing, and realize, well, no, that's who they are, versus you're an expert at being you. It's not amateur hour of being someone else. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I love books, for instance. I've loved books since I was a kid. I'm obsessed. I try to read a book a week, and I talk about that. The other day I'm putting together my own personal stock photography collection, so I don't have to worry about, taking someone else's photo without realizing it,
right?
That it belongs to someone else or whatever. I just don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So I took a picture of a dress, not a real dress, but an art dress made out of books. And I thought, this is something I can use in my own, on social media somewhere, maybe on my website, maybe in a blog post. I don't know yet. But I feel like once you know who you are and what your brand is, then you can select, what kinds of photos to take, what kinds of opportunities to say yes to, which things don't speak to you and that you shouldn't be spending your energy on. And then what I meant to say earlier was not just how those things, like how we dress and talk and the voice in our writing, not just how that ties into our brand, but it really tells a story. Even our prices tell a story, and everything is really telling a story about us. Like if we PM people, if we private message people in Facebook groups and are like, hey, buy my thing, that's telling that person a story about how we operate. If that's against the group rules or if it comes off as spammy, then the story people will have about us is that we're spammy. So anytime we take an action, we're really contributing to our overall greater story.
Right, exactly. And that's so critical, that everything we do is part of that story. We're writing a new chapter, and based on how people are interacting with us. And since the only thing we can control is that experience, we have to decide, what message do we want them to receive?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you think about how many times you've gotten a message or from somebody saying, oh, I have this great offer, or even better, it's like you look at emails that you've probably gotten them where it's the cold solicited email saying, oh, we can help you do all these great things. Like, if you would have taken 30 seconds to look at my page, you would have realized that's what I do for a living.
Right.
That always blows me away. Like, really? Did you not read anything, or did you just kind of cut and paste for a couple hours and just massing out emails in hopes that someone responds?
Yeah, I know. It's always kind of sad to see that.
Oh, yes. But it just goes back down to the story they have. It's not going to be a blockbuster. It might be in a blockbuster video, which don't exist anymore, but it won't be a blockbuster. Yeah. So,
yeah.
So when it comes to crafting that story, what is it that people should be thinking about? Because you want it to have that natural feel to it. It's captivating, it's motivating, it's inspiring, and so forth.
Yeah, so I have a freebie on my website that I call the Story Lab Blueprint. And basically what it does is it takes people through 6 steps, a 6-step process of figuring out who it is that they're talking to. So I know that that's one of the tactics that we usually do. And I've seen you talk about that, I think, in previous podcasts, where people really need to know who it is they're talking to and who is their target person, because that will really make a difference. So for instance, I was working on a project for one client, and since the audience for his project was going to be scientists, there were certain things we didn't have to explain because scientists knew some of the language and terminology. But if the audience was not going to be scientists, we would have to talk differently. It's just as simple as that. So then the second part is the what. what is it that you're offering to people, and how do you end up describing that in a way that is unique? What is it that makes it a little bit weird and a little bit different? And then I also like to think about the why. So Simon Sinek made that question really famous. But basically, why is it that we're doing the work that we're doing? What is your greater mission and vision for your business? It's not just, most likely it's not just make money. For a lot of people, for some people maybe it is, but for a lot of people they have another reason, which is really propelling them during the hard times when things aren't going well. It's that mission and vision that keeps them going. And then I think all good stories have a struggle. So when I wrote the story about starting my magazine, I shared that on my About page and my website, and I was thinking through what were some of the challenging moments that I had, and one of them was I didn't have a magazine when I got the first subscriber. I actually don't know how the first subscriber found us because she was from Ireland, and she signed up. I don't even know how she signed up because it was a long time ago. I don't know if I had a link on my website yet. I don't know what happened. She may have sent me a check. It was strange. And then I thought, oh my gosh, now I have to go make a magazine because somebody subscribed. So there were some challenging things like that. And also I had not made a magazine in a really long time. And things had changed about how you go about it. So, because it was actually a print magazine. So those are some of the challenges, and there were more than that, but no need to go into all of it. But I think everyone has challenges, and that people really find those interesting, because it's not as interesting when someone just waltzed down Easy Street and started their business. We all have something that went wrong along the way, and I think that helps people identify with us, and then also know when they meet challenges, they can overcome them and still have success. And then there's two more things. So there's also surprise. I think, what was it that surprised you in your story, in your business story? And that can also be surprising to the reader. And I think another element that surprise can really help with is making sure that we have good details in there. I tell this story about, I have this idea of being weird, being you, to differentiate yourself. And I tell a story about going shopping with my grandmother. And she told me not just to buy the circular hoop earrings, but to get some earrings that were shaped like the letter D, because she said they look a little different. And that was her advice. Go for something that looked a little different. I followed her advice. Every time I wore those earrings, I got so many compliments on them. So that's not a life-changing moment to have a piece of jewelry, but it drove home that point that all you have to do is something a little bit different, and that speaks to you and feels aligned with who you are, and that helps set you apart from the competition. And then the last part is what I call the smile or the satisfaction. So even though personally some of my favorite movies, like Chinese movies, have sad endings, people want a happy ending to your business story, because if you say, your business tanked and nothing worked, obviously that's not quite the, or, it can be part of your story. It could be part of a challenge, but you need to have an ending that aligns with whatever it is that you're doing today. So, and then that shows how you gain the experience and knowledge so that you can establish your authority and your credibility to your audience, and show them why you have the skills to be able to help them doing whatever it is that you do.
Oh, exactly. You think about the most popular movies. How often is it that people, they flock out to see one where the hero of the story doesn't make it? Most people don't want to do that.
Right.
They want to see the person come out on top. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so sad and blah blah blah. But
right.
I think of the only movie that comes to mind where like one of your heroes of the story didn't make it was the movie Titanic. Yep.
And then more recently, Star Wars. I was pretty surprised.
Well, you think about Star Wars in terms of, especially the last one. I look at it this way. Technically speaking, the heroes of the story couldn't have made it because they weren't in the fourth one. So they had to do something with them. Right.
I know. And that's probably one reason why people could deal with it.
Yeah.
Because we as the audience already knew that going in.
Right.
But I have to say, it was funny to me because it still felt surprising, even though I knew the future for the people. You know what I'm saying? It still felt funny that there wasn't a happy ending, because that's just what I'm used to in movies.
Right. You're hoping maybe there's going to be some way they're going to get out of this. And then you realize, nope, they're pretty much screwed.
Yep, yep.
And because we want to see the good in things. It's what gives us hope every single day, and that's what people need in their business. They don't want to work with the person that says, "Sorry, buddy, you're done." It doesn't help them.
Exactly, exactly. I spoke to some nonprofits last week, and we were talking about when you're working on topics that aren't such happy topics like poverty or, other issues like that, how do you keep people from feeling hopeless? You want people to feel inspired enough to donate. So we were talking about stories of hope, instead of always saying, and the person has this problem and that problem and the other problem, it begins to feel insurmountable and as though someone's donation will end up doing nothing. But if you show the results and the hope and what happened that was good, it really helps people say, it helps people think and internalize, if I donate my money, these are the kind of results that they get. And so maybe that will happen even more if I donate money and help them. So yeah, it applies in a lot of different ways.
It does indeed, because people want the positive benefits. They want to know that there's a possibility for success instead of, oh, well, I guess this is the way it's going to be, so let's just ride off into the sunset and call it life. And no one really likes that.
Right.
And so it's more important that businesses, they spend that time developing the right story. So obviously with stories, it's, people need to have it. But what is it people should be doing to get it out there? Because you think about someone said, well, I have this great story, and then they're kind of stuck with, so now what?
Exactly. That's one of my favorite topics. I think what's really important is to go back to that who and think about where do your ideal for you people like to spend time. So if you're looking for instance, I was talking with a mindset coach, and she likes to talk to people in their 7th decade. She likes to help people in their 6th and 7th decade. And she said, they're not really on Instagram, so I don't plan to use that. Now, there could be, a small percentage of people in that age group who are, but for the most part, she's using other methods that she finds more useful for those age groups. So it might not make sense for her to spend time on Instagram. Then I went walking with a friend who was asking me about how I'm able to build my business and get clients, because it's something that she's been struggling with. And she said, so how do you do that? And I said, well, I need to know more about your ideal people and where they spend time. And she didn't know. And then I said, well, I use Facebook because that works for me. And then she said, oh, well, I wonder if I should use that. And I said, I'm not sure. And then later she said, I don't really use Facebook and I don't really like it. And that was a big red flag, or big lights started shining for me, because I realized she really shouldn't be on Facebook if she doesn't like it, because you want to enjoy your marketing and you want to continue doing it, and you don't want it to feel like you're forcing yourself to use a tool that you don't use. So even if Instagram would be the best platform for you, I wouldn't recommend using it unless you could somehow figure out a way to hire somebody, or you really liked it and you like to use it yourself, because most likely you're just not going to be as successful if you really hate using a certain platform, and there's probably another platform you could use instead that you might like better. So those are some of the, there's a lot of different ways, Facebook, starting a Facebook group, connecting with people on Instagram. And Instagram is a wonderful, I've been looking a lot at how people share stories there, and I've gotten back on it after a time away myself. And it's a really wonderful way to be able to share stories and, with photos, because those perform really well too. So always pairing your story with some kind of photo, even if it's not completely relevant, really helps people see what you're doing.
Right, exactly. It's so critical, because you look at how often people, they just want to be on every single platform, and it doesn't serve them.
Right.
I've had people say, oh, you have to be on Snapchat. My response is, no, I don't. Simply because I don't want to spread myself too thin. I know where I have an audience. I know where to engage people at. And it's concentrating your efforts there, because it's so easily in today's world to spread yourself thin across all these different platforms and not generate any results.
Exactly. And I think it's better to do a few platforms well rather than spread out. So, some people could say, oh, you're not on Instagram, because I've only just gotten on recently and I haven't posted yet. But I think what's more important is that, I had to figure some things out first. And when I first started my business, my clients weren't on Facebook and Instagram. I was working for corporations. So I was actually getting a lot of clients through speaking and through networking, through in-person networking and referrals. So it was a whole different ball game back then. Social media was not quite as useful to me, but now I've shifted things and I'm working with small business owners. I'm shifting my work in that direction. And, the people that I want to connect with now are on those platforms. So it makes sense for me to be spending time there now. And I really love Facebook, and I think Instagram is a lot of fun too. So I know that I'll continue with it because I enjoy those platforms so much.
Right, exactly. When you enjoy it, it makes it so much easier instead of every time you open up the platform, like, oh gosh, I got to do this. It defeats the purpose.
Exactly. And that's why as a marketing, when I work on marketing with people, I don't really come at it from a particular platform, because I really feel like the answer for what platform to use depends upon the audience, depends upon the business owner and what they like to use, and perhaps some other factors too. And I just see too often where someone who teaches a certain tactic tries to jam everybody into that tactic. You have to do Facebook ads. And by the way, I teach Facebook ads, and so of course they're going to tell you need Facebook ads. But it's not really the right answer for everybody to do a certain tactic. It really takes some thinking about what's going to work best. And of course, testing is fine. I mean, I'm all for testing. I tested Facebook ads for a previous offer I had, and I realized for that particular offer it wasn't so great, but it would probably be good for another kind of offer I have. So that's something that that I'll be testing in the future. So I think that that's important too, if you have the resources, is just testing different platforms and seeing how they work.
Right. And the example I love to use when people say, when they hear someone that says, oh, you have to use this platform, is I look at, let's say, a 24-hour plumber, that if, the toilet and things are backing up at 3 a.m., you're not jumping on Facebook and starting asking friends, hey, does anybody know a plumber that can help me out right now? You're not doing that. You're going over to Google, you're typing in like emergency plumber, and you're calling whoever comes up at the top.
Yep.
So people have to understand the buying patterns of who their customers are. And that's where sometimes we forget about that certain businesses, hey, they're going to be great on Facebook. Others, don't even waste your energy because they're not going to go there. Like I know if my toilet was backed up at 3 a.m, I'm not going on Facebook at all. It would be the last place I would look.
Right. It really depends. Like I found an excellent doctor from a referral, but there are other doctors who create large brands around themselves, and they speak at conferences, and they have, huge blogs. And so just even within the medical field, there's so many different ways you can approach your business. Some doctors are really low key, and others are out there speaking and, doing podcasts and all kinds of things. So it really depends upon what that person wants to do and how they want to grow their business as well. But I think you make a really good point with that. That's so true.
Because sometimes we just need that visual reference, like, oh yeah, that is true. We wouldn't do it that way. Because when we recognize the buying patterns, it changes what people do in terms of their marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes back down to people have to realize that there's not a one-size-fits-all. And that's why I always recommend it's better to use a framework that you think about. You have the stages that marketing people go through. Well, there's not a one-size-fits-all. Like, okay, every tool you need to fix this, you either have a hammer or a screwdriver. It's not like that. It's going to be, well, what's the problem? Okay, let's figure out the best solution for that one thing, but it's still moving people through the stages of customer acquisition.
Exactly. And that's why I have something in the works, and I like to talk about the personalized marketing plan for small business. So it's not just going back to those tactics that we talked about before, but it's about really unearthing some of these very things that you're talking about so that people can get mindful about their marketing and really think about how do they want to share these stories, because it's really combining your story plus marketing. So it's basically combining your words about how you started your business and about the things you've learned, plus what are the perfect channels for you to share this with the world. And sometimes it might not even be social media. So you and I, we both use social media a lot, and we excel there, but there's also other methods. I mean, there's speaking. I speak to groups of actual real humans.
As opposed to fake ones.
Yeah, and also fake ones and some zombies from time to time. No. And that's a wonderful source of referrals and customers. And some people like to do workshops. They'll have sort of a standard workshop that they do for free to speak to clients. Some people who live in larger cities especially will work on a networking plan. I usually go to a few live events. I live in the DC area, so as I said before, and so I will often go to in-person events and meet people in person. I enjoy that. Some people hate that, and they would rather do all their networking on social media because it means they don't have to drive 30 or 40 minutes or get on the metro, and they would rather do that. So again, it's so personal how you decide to build your business. And it's really just a matter of looking at all the available choices and then figuring out, what feels good to try this month. And then going through that process of experimentation. If you aren't sure yet what you like to do, you can test and experiment and see, what do I like? What seems to work well? What could I improve in the areas that I like? And then move forward smarter about your own marketing.
Right, exactly. It's so critical you find out what works. I'm like you, I'm a fan of leverage different types of in-person events, but use them properly, because it's so easy for people to, let's say if they're just doing networking events, to go to one and another and not do any actual work.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to figure out what's effective, be willing to test things out, and if something's not working, change it.
Right. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you leverage Facebook. What have you found to be the most effective ways for you to leverage Facebook to grow your business? Because there are some people who think Facebook, well, people just talk about what they ate and they're posting cat pictures. So there has to be more to it.
Hey, I just posted a cat picture this morning, people. I am pro photos of food and cats, I have to say. But yeah, I think one of the best ways to think about Facebook or any social media is think of it like a cocktail party. I call it my cocktail party method of marketing, which is basically anything you wouldn't do at a cocktail party, you just shouldn't do on Facebook. So, we would never walk into a cocktail party and say, hey, buy my thing. Hey, everybody, I wrote this book. I started this business. I have this thing to sell. Look at me. I mean, people would think we were out of our minds if we did that. But yet people do that on Facebook all the time, where I'll go to the occasional feed, someone's Facebook profile, and it's just, buy this, buy this, buy this, and it's all it is. So I think there has to be a combination of content. It really comes down to your content marketing plan, and that it's pretty smart to have some fun pieces that are more personal and let people see a slice of your life, and then some that are educational, that teach people something that they want to know, and just really mixing up the different kinds of formats. So sometimes it could be written, sometimes it's a video, sometimes maybe it's a piece of content you've shared from someone else, so that, you can share really new ideas with people, and, you benefit from this thought leadership, and then you share it with other people to benefit, so that they can benefit from it as well, while at the same time you're a thought leader. So those are some of the things that I've used that have worked really well for me. And I think the bottom line is developing relationships, just like you would at a cocktail party. So you walk into a party, and instead of that announcement that I talked about before, you would just go up to someone and say, hey, Mary, I'm Deborah. Nice to meet you. And then you ask them a question, right? That's what we do. So on Facebook, I ask a lot of questions of people, and I'm genuinely curious about what it is they're working on. In my Facebook group, I'll ask people to share, someone's getting a new business card. And I said, well, if you're willing, I'd love to see a picture of it when you have them back from the printer. Or someone in there talks about how to follow up with prospects, so that and also current customers. So then I asked her, for some follow-up information to her follow-up, just to get some more information about things I was curious about. And so I think it's really cool, because not only am I learning something and they're getting to share their expertise with people, but we're also developing a relationship. And who knows? Part of the fun is not knowing where a relationship you develop will go. Sometimes you just develop them, and it's mysterious what will happen next. And I really enjoy that part of it.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like wondering what a cat's thinking. You have no idea what's really going on in their minds.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you really love to leverage Facebook groups on the platform.
I do. I think they're really fun. I've had a good time in them, and I've made friends from around the world. So for me, that platform really works well. I don't actually share a lot about business on my personal profile, but as I become friends with more business owners, it might make more sense. So I have a deep, dark past as a poet, and Yeah, and I'm friends with a lot of poets on Facebook and a lot of novelists. So it's kind of funny. So I'm in this space of where I have a lot of writers as friends, and then I have a lot of business owners as friends, and so it's sort of interesting because if I posted a lot about business, the writers would think that that was kind of, they may think that's kind of odd. I don't know. So I have to figure that piece out.
It's one of those delicate dances you have to do because there's not
Yeah.
this one size fits all that if you put too much business stuff out there, well then people are like, oh my gosh, you're sold out to the capital cronies and they want to run the other direction. Other people are like, I
Yeah.
love this. They give you more. So it's just figuring out the right balance, but it comes back down to you're building the rapport and relationships so people see who you are.
Exactly. And I think one piece of advice I would give, this is a takeaway anybody could use, is just mix up your content and then see what kind of reaction you get. Because there was someone, I love her posts about her business and she's really smart, but there were just too many of them in a row. And I don't know if it was the Facebook algorithm only showing me these posts, or I never actually went to look and see if she was posting them all in a row, but it just seemed that way. And I unfollowed, I mean, I stayed friends with her, but I unfollowed her posts because it just became a little too much for me to have the same topic, pretty much the same topic always popping up. So I would say just vary posts between the personal, the business, maybe another topic or two to keep it mixed up so that nobody, if they do decide I never want to see another business post, then at least you have other content there. They'll be more likely to say, oh, okay, I'll say, I'll keep following this person's content.
Right. And that's where it goes down to people have to understand with the relationships. You have to interact with people the way that you would want people to interact with you. Because I highly doubt anyone ever say that, well, I just want to sell people. But then if you say, well, do you want to be sold to all the time? 9 times out of 10 it would be, well, no. So you have to make it reciprocal.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
and people got stuck with that notion. They think, well, it's just there for selling. No, it's not. That you're going to, you're building up those relationships. And the example I love to use is like dating. That you're not going to walk up to someone the first moment you meet them and say, so, your place or mine. It's not going to go well.
Exactly. There are definite similarities between dating and business relationship building for sure.
And I also like to jokingly say, even if the person does say yes, I'm still pretty sure it's not going to go well in your favor. So,
Yeah, that is true. When people are too eager in business, like when they're too eager, I've found that usually doesn't end up going well for some reason. Whether it's because they want to become a client yesterday, something feels off about it, or somebody who wants to partner with you before you really feel comfortable. But we can all make mistakes with getting really excited. I'm sure I have too, where I've probably been like, hey, let's get coffee or do this thing because I'm so excited. And the person's probably like, whoa, okay, I hardly know you, back up. But
right,
because no one's perfect. But I think for the most part, like we have to know we got to take this one step at a time.
right. And that's vital. We have to take it one step at a time. But here's the other key point that people have to remember. When you're out prospecting for clients and such, you have to know when to say no as well, just as when you're saying yes.
Yeah, it's so important. I think a lot of times in my own journey of learning about this, just I have a much better sense now than I did 2 years ago about whether people value the work I do, and and that has helped me a lot. That's served me very well. And sometimes you're right, you do have to say no and know how to say that in a way that helps everybody save face and move on in a happy way. And sometimes someone isn't right for me, but that doesn't mean that they aren't right for someone else. So I try to know other people who do similar work or who do complementary work so that I can send people in another direction if that's the case.
Right. And that's what you have to do is know how to handle it. And ultimately, if you can be able to send them to the right person, it still maintains that rapport because they'll think, wow, this is great. You made sure that my needs are being met instead of trying to do it at a semi-productive way yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And then you still served that person well. Yeah, exactly.
Because then at the end of it all, they're going to remember like you took care of them. And then when people need your help, they're still going to be willing to refer you because you still help them solve the problem that they had.
Right.
Versus say, hey, sorry, can't help you, so good luck, and off they run. And they're thinking, well, that person was a dirtbag. Here's a 1-star review. How about that?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's so tricky too. I see a lot of questions about that from people in various, in Facebook groups and in person, where people are asking, how do I handle this situation with a client? Because they realize they don't want to work with the person and they need to not move forward. And so those are good things to take into consideration.
Right, because I think everybody's had that moment. You're like, oh no, why did I say yes? What was I thinking? And
Right.
There's nothing you can do except just push through. And it all goes back down to the values and expectations when you know that you have that ideal type of client to work with, because when people don't meet it, it's never going to be a pleasant experience.
Right.
And so that changes.
And that's,
stuff.
Yeah, and actually, not to make everything in the world about stories, but I think the content and stories that we put together for our websites and in our social media and so on can be really helpful in that regard. Because I think I think content can be used to filter out people who aren't right for us. So, if you can't take someone seriously who has blue hair or pink hair or a nose ring or who wears a tuxedo on his website, that's something that, if you think that that's silly, then you probably don't want to work with that person and they've weeded you out. Or, maybe there's somebody this is just completely made up, but someone who loves skateboarding and there's always pictures of him skateboarding on his website, but he's like a master at website design or something, and if that bothers you, then that's not going to be the person for you, So I think that's part of why sharing our story through our words is so important, because it helps us attract the right for us people. I like to say, when you use the true for you words, you attract the right for you people. And it just makes the whole process of customer acquisition and lead generation a lot easier and more pleasant and even fun sometimes.
Right, exactly. So now, have you had a lot of success leveraging Facebook groups for lead generation? Because some people are thinking it sounds like a great way to build a business, especially in the beginning if they're on a limited budget.
Yeah, I think it can be fabulous to do that. So I think one of the things that a lot of people regret in business is not building their email lists sooner. So I've heard that a lot. And I think that people think, oh my goodness, it's so complicated, and they just get a brain freeze, because when you're starting a business, there's so much you have to learn about. And then you think, I have to find an email software, make a freebie opt-in, and learn how to make emails and write them. And it's so much, right? And then you're supposed to have a welcome sequence to welcome people and nurture them into your world and teach them. And some people aren't natural born teachers. So just right in there, we have so much, there's copywriting, teaching, the email tech, maybe design if a person wants designed emails. So it's a lot. But I think like the one little step I would take right there is just to figure out, what is it your people want? And so if you go back to that 6-step process I was talking about, just figuring out the who and the what will help you figure out what is it that they would want from me so that they can get started. Taking, the first little step towards success with whatever it is that you as a business owner offer. So I think that that's really key. And I know as a user of email lists, I really love checklists. They've really helped me a lot, just to be able to go through a checklist and see different things I can do. Things to improve a landing page, or ways I can improve my website in the next week or something like that, just to make them actionable and something that doesn't take a whole lot of time. I think makes a email opt-in be very popular.
Right. And that's valuable because we live in this world now. People are inundated with information. They want things that are quick and easy to implement, versus you think about years ago, it was pretty common to say, hey, sign up for my free 7-day course. And people are like, okay, sure, why not? Now it's like, I'm not waiting 7 days to get through this.
Yep. Yeah, I might be one of the last people who likes those kinds of courses. But it also has caused me to realize I'm in a beta for someone's course right now. So we're giving her feedback on the presentation. So she did an hour-long video, and then she wrote a really wonderful post about why she's not doing any more hour-long videos, partly based on our feedback, but also based on some life lessons she's experienced recently. And And I had been coming to that same idea too. So I'm going to be doing Facebook Lives about marketing for small business, and I'm keeping them 2 minutes and under. It's going to be actionable tips, because I really believe in something you can take away now and use. That's why I keep mentioning actionable tips in this podcast, because if somebody wants to be able to take something away now and use it, I would love nothing more than for someone to benefit in some way and go get something accomplished in the next week. Just one small thing,
Right.
To move their business forward.
And that's always been my philosophy. You make things actionable because you look at the amount of content that people are exposed to, and so much of it is overwhelming in one capacity or another, and they can't resonate with one thing. Like, okay, what's a short list of things I can do today? Because you listen to some podcasts, you watch webinars, it's like great information, but now what?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I know I think it was several years ago, I spoke at a digital marketing conference about search engine optimization. Mm-hmm. And I remember they asked me to have 3 key takeaways. And that's the first time I'd been asked for that, but I've been asked for it since with different kinds of talks. And I just really like this idea of thinking about that. It must be something that people were asking for in their post-conference surveys. That's the impression I got. Mm-hmm. And I realized this is really what people want now. They want to be able to know, how can I take all this information that you've been talking about for the past 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, and really begin to implement it at my work. When I get back to the office, how can I start working on this now? Because people now are pulled in a zillion different directions, and I know that they appreciate shorter, still packed with value, but shorter pieces of content.
Right. All the Facebook Lives I do, for the most part, they're average between 5 and 7 minutes. We're mm-hmm. incorporating a little bit of a story, that rapport building, and then here's a couple things that you can do. Usually stick to 3, because any more than that, the ability for most people to consume and process starts diminishing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's quick to consume, because you look at a video, comes up like, oh, this sounds interesting. It's 5 minutes long. I'll watch that. If I see something that looks like, okay, for the next hour, you've just lost me.
Right. I know. There was some internet marketing training I did probably 7 or 10 years ago. And it seemed like every video took 45 to 60 minutes. And I just think of the hours of my life I sat there. And the intro stories took way too long. And I was thinking about my future webinars that I plan to have. And you know how webinars always seem to be about an hour? Right. I don't know where we got that rule that just because meetings and corporations are always an hour. I think now it's bled over into the online marketing and entrepreneurial world where we think we have to have a webinar and it has to be an hour. But I just thought, well, what if I make webinars that are 20 minutes?
Right.
Because a lot of a webinar is usually 20 minutes of the person going on about their life and how great they are. But I was like, I could just cut that down to like 2 sentences and then move on with the valuable content.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's my philosophy. For webinars with me, I'll tell people, you want to learn more about me? Here's the link to a page on my website where you can look at things your heart's content. You can connect with me on Facebook. You can do all this stuff, and you will know more than what I will say in 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you think about it, it's that respect for somebody's time, and why listen to somebody going like, and at the age of 13, I conquered, I don't care. So,
right.
But it's getting to that, the value there. And then my philosophy is also giving people stuff that is actionable, because there's so many webinars out there where people are marketing, you're going to learn these 3 things to help you do blank. And then I listen to you didn't help people do squat with that. Your headline said one thing, but the content was nowhere near it.
Right. And that happened to me with a Facebook ad recently where something was promised and then I clicked because I was sort of curious about it. And it was nowhere. And there was a sign up for something completely unrelated. And there were even complaints in the comments from other people who said, hey, when I clicked on the link, it wasn't there. And that was just not good for that brand. That's the kind of thing that tells a story about your brand. We all can make mistakes, but I think it happened more than one time with different ads. And it began to seem like a theme as opposed to just a mistake, so.
Right. Exactly. And you have to be consistent and just put the information that's valuable. And if you give people in that webinar something that says you're going to have 3 strategies to implement to grow your business, give them those strategies that we live in this world where people still this scarcity mindset. Like, if I tell them this stuff, then they're not going to want to hire me. Well, the reality is a lot of information, if you just take a little bit of time, you can find it on YouTube. It's nothing that's this big secret anymore. And it all comes down to, in courses, we have to move more towards helping people implement what we teach them.
Yep, exactly. Because I think what I'm hearing from people, what they really want is help with the marketing piece of it. And they don't really understand how to market. That's what I keep hearing from people. And so, yeah, they do need the story. So that's part of it. And then once they have the story, they're not sure what they should do with it or different ways they can use it. And I think what's so cool about it, so just to give more actionable tips for your listeners, I think, 2 or 3 ways you can use a story immediately. One is your about page. My about page is very long, but people can skim through it. I've also got bullet points. But I thought I'm going to do that. I've also tested my story in Facebook groups and have gotten a pretty good response from groups full of my target market. People are like, your story made me happy. And I've gotten people who are like, I want to take you to lunch, or they've friended me on Facebook, or they came and joined my group and I didn't even have a link to the group they actually hunted me down to go join my group because I didn't have a link in the story. So that was pretty interesting. So when I saw it was working well, I thought, okay, this is going on my website now. I feel ready for this to be there. So that's one way is being able to use it in Facebook groups. I also have it as a way for people who join my list to get to know me a little bit better. So I think it's an abbreviated version of my story. And someone just wrote me a note today when she received it in the welcome series and said, oh, I really like this. Thank you for writing it. So I just got thanked for writing an email. And normally we think of email lists as being like, not more emails. So that felt pretty good. And then I'm trying to think, what's a third way? I think a third way would be some kind of abbreviated story on Instagram with a picture, so that people can get to know you, as you gear up your Instagramming, if that's something that you choose to do. Oh, and then I'm going to add in a fourth way. I also shared my story briefly in an in-person speaking engagement. So I was invited to introduce myself. This was a small group at lunchtime. And so I just went through a brief version of my story with the magazine so people understood where I was coming from. And so they also knew that I actually had experience to be talking about what I was talking about. So there's just some different ways that you can incorporate using stories to be able to help your business.
Right, and that's powerful. As we begin wrapping things up, what is one thing you recommend for entrepreneurs and business owners to do to really get their message out there effectively?
I think be authentic. It's as simple as that. And I think stories can help you be authentic with people.
And that in itself is priceless because there's so many people, they think that they have to show up differently and not realize people don't want you to be fake. They want you to be you.
Exactly. Be weird, be you.
Right.
That's what I like to say.
Right. If you've been weird your whole life, why stop now?
Exactly. And to add to authenticity, I would say be authentic and be conversational. Nobody wants to read, stuffy writing, like hereforth and blah, blah, blah. And, that really wordy writing that we're always told not to use. I would say just use something more conversational so it really sounds like you. Because there's nothing, well, there are worse things, but one of the challenging things is when someone comes to work with you and you are not how you appear on your website. I've heard people talk about, I went to go work with this person. They weren't like how they were on their website. And then there was disappointment. So you really do yourself a favor just by being you, being weird and being you so that people know what it is that they're getting.
Right. It's kind of like, people like dating profiles. If, they have the picture up there, which was from 20 years ago, and now they're like 50 pounds overweight and balding. Like, that's not quite the same thing. So,
yeah, not quite the same. Exactly.
Yeah. Like the result is not going to be what you're expecting. Like, but they wouldn't like me otherwise. You think they're not going to figure this out when they see you in person? So
yeah.
you have to show up authentic consistently.
Yep.
It makes all the difference in the world. So how can people reach out and learn more about you and how you can help them in their marketing?
Well, they can learn more about my Facebook group at biz storytellinglab.com. And they can learn more about me on my website at radiantmedialabs.com. And so I would love to see people in the Facebook group or on my website, and feel free to drop me a note and let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer. I love to hear from people, so feel free to reach out.
Oh, excellent. Well, I want to thank you for coming onto the Big Movement podcast today and sharing a wealth of wisdom about storytelling, engagement, and people just embracing their inner weirdness.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Big Movement Podcast today. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now that you've surely been inspired to take your entrepreneurial career and business to the next level, you can stop by the website and get more. And if you're ready to boost your business brand, be sure to grab your free report, 7 Easy Steps to Build Your Brand Today.